The spit hit his face before he even saw it coming. "Get the hell away from my bike, you filthy piece of trash!" The homeless man stood there, frozen, feeling the warm saliva slide down his weathered cheek. His hands were still extended, holding the $20 bill he'd been trying to give back to the leather-clad biker who dropped it. The bill fluttered to the ground between them, landing in a puddle of last night's rain mixed with motor oil. I was just trying to," he started, his voice cracking from disuse. How long had it been since he'd actually spoken to someone? Days? Weeks? Trying to what? Steal from me? Touch my Harley with your diseased hands? The biker's voice boomed across the parking lot of the roadside diner. Other bikers from his crew started gathering around, their boots creating a symphony of intimidation on the asphalt. "You know what you are? You're nothing. Less than nothing. A stain on society that someone forgot to wash away." The homeless man should have walked away. God knows he'd heard worse in the 3 years he'd been living on the streets. But something about that moment, about the way the biker's friends laughed, about the way the few decent people in that parking lot turned their heads away, pretending not to see, something inside him finally snapped. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly, his fists clenching despite himself. "If you're watching this right now, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a revelation about how we judge people, how heroes can fall, and how sometimes the person we spit on might be the one who saved our brother's life. Trust me, you've never heard anything like what's coming next." The lead biker, Tank, his leather vest proclaimed, stepped closer. He was massive, probably 6'4", 300 pounds of muscle and attitude. The skull tattoo on his neck seemed to leer at the homeless man as Tank leaned in close enough that the stench of whiskey filled the air between them. "I know everything I need to know, old man. You're a bum, a nobody. Probably a drunk or a junkie who threw his life away." Tank grabbed the man's army surplus jacket, the one he'd worn for 3 years straight, the one that still had the fading bloodstains from that night everything changed. This stolen valor too? Pretending to be a soldier to get sympathy? That's when Tank's grip shifted, and the homeless man's sleeve rode up. Time seemed to stop. Tank's eyes locked onto the man's forearm, onto the tattoo that had been kept hidden. The one that told a story he'd been running from for 3 years. Tank's face went from contempt to confusion, to something the homeless man hadn't seen directed at him in so long he'd forgotten what it looked like. Fear. That's a seal trident," Tank whispered, his voice suddenly small. "And those letters underneath. CMH, the man said quietly. Congressional Medal of Honor, Operation Red Sand, Syria, 2018. Tank's grip loosened, but the homeless man wasn't done. Because now that he'd started talking, really talking, for the first time in 3 years, he couldn't stop. The words came pouring out like water through a broken dam. "My name is Marcus Ghost Reeves. And you're right about one thing. I am nothing now. But 3 years ago, I was somebody. I had a wife named Sarah who lit up every room she walked into. A daughter, Emma, 6 years old with pigtails and a laugh that could cure cancer. I had a house with a white fence and a golden retriever named Buddy who'd steal socks and hide them under the bed. I had brothers, not by blood, but by something stronger. Navy SEALs who would have died for me and some who did." Tank had let go completely now, stepping back. His crew had gone silent. Someone had pulled out a phone, typing frantically, probably Googling the name Marcus Reeves. In seconds, they'd know. They'd all know. "But you want to know how I ended up here? Living behind dumpsters, fighting rats for scraps, getting spit on by people like you?" Marcus pulled off his jacket entirely, revealing arms covered in scars, burns, and tattoos that each told a story of service, sacrifice, and loss. It started with a phone call. December 15th, 2021. 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days ago. But who's counting, right? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tank and his crew had formed a semicircle around him now, but not in threat. They were listening. After 3 years of being invisible, someone was finally listening to Marcus Reeves. I was at Fort Bragg, training the next generation of operators. It was supposed to be my last assignment before retirement. 20 years of service, multiple tours, more medals than I could wear on my dress uniform. I was done being Ghost, the operator who could infiltrate any compound, neutralize any target, disappear without a trace. I was ready to just be Marcus. Husband, father, maybe coach my daughter's soccer team. Marcus paused, the memory of that day hitting him like a physical blow. His legs suddenly felt weak, and he sat down right there on the cold, wet asphalt. Tank, surprisingly, sat down too. This massive, intimidating biker who'd spit in Marcus's face moments ago sat down in a puddle to hear his story. The call came at 14:37 hours. I remember because I was watching the clock, counting down the minutes until I could go home for Emma's Christmas play. She was playing an angel. Marcus's voice cracked. The base commander himself came to get me. That's when you know it's bad, when they don't trust anyone else to deliver the news. Marcus pulled out a worn, water-damaged photo from his pocket. It was the only thing he'd kept. Sarah and Emma at the beach, the last photo taken of them alive. Drunk driver. Wrong way on I-95. Head-on collision at 75 miles per hour. They said it was instant. They didn't suffer. Marcus traced their faces with a shaking finger. But I've suffered every second since. Because while they were dying, while some alcoholic piece of garbage was ending their lives, where was I? The big hero, the Navy SEAL who'd saved countless lives, who'd earned the Congressional Medal of Honor for carrying 3 wounded Marines out of an ambush, while taking 7 bullets myself. Where was I when my family needed me? Training. Marcus spit the word out like it was poison. Teaching other men how to be heroes, while I failed to protect the only people who really mattered. One of Tank's crew members, a younger guy with tears tattooing his face, spoke up softly. "That's not your fault, man. You couldn't have known." "Couldn't I?" Marcus stood up abruptly, 3 years of rage and guilt exploding out of him. I knew Sarah was taking Emma to get her costume fitted that day. I could have driven them, should have driven them, but no, I had one more training exercise to run, one more group of recruits who needed the great Ghost Reeves to show them how it's done. My commanding officer even offered to let me leave early, but I said no. I said duty first. He laughed again, harsh and bitter. Duty first. That was always my motto. Duty to country, duty to the teams, duty to the mission. But what about my duty to them? What about my duty to be there to protect them? To at least say goodbye? Tank stood up slowly. "The funeral," he said quietly. "I remember seeing it on the news. They gave them full military honors because of you." "Yeah," Marcus nodded, the memory threatening to break him completely. Vice President showed up. Secretary of Defense, half of SEAL Team 6. They folded 2 flags that day, one for Sarah, who they posthumously made an honorary Navy Spouse of Distinction, and a small one for Emma. You know what the chaplain said to me? He said they were heroes too, for sacrificing so much so I could serve. Heroes. Marcus kicked at a piece of gravel, sending it skittering across the parking lot. Heroes don't die because their husband and father chose work over family. Heroes don't get killed by some investment banker who decided to have a liquid lunch and drive his BMW home. "What happened to him?" Tank asked. "The driver?" Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Jonathan Pemberton III, old money family from Boston. His lawyers got him off with a slap on the wrist. 2 years probation, suspended license, community service. His family's connections made sure he never saw the inside of a cell. He sent flowers to the funeral with a card that said, "Sorry for your loss." Sorry for your loss, like he'd stepped on my foot or bumped into me at the store. The rage was building now. The same rage that had consumed him, destroyed him, transformed him from a decorated warrior into what he'd become. I stood at their graves after everyone left. Snow was starting to fall, and I made them a promise. I promised them justice. Real justice. Not the joke the legal system had delivered. I knew where Pemberton lived. Knew his routines, his security details, his vulnerabilities. I was Ghost, remember? I could get to anyone, anywhere. Marcus looked at each of the bikers surrounding him, seeing a mix of understanding and concern in their faces. For 3 months, I planned it. Every detail, every contingency. I'd make it look like an accident, or maybe a robbery gone wrong. I had 17 different scenarios, each one ending with Jonathan Pemberton III taking his last breath, hopefully thinking about Sarah and Emma as he did. "But you didn't do it," the younger biker said. "It wasn't a question." "No," Marcus admitted. "I didn't. You know why? Because the night I was going to do it, I had a dream. Emma was standing at the foot of my bed in her angel costume from the play she never got to perform. She looked at me with those big brown eyes she got from her mother and said, 'Daddy, angels don't hurt people, they help them fly.'" Marcus wiped at his eyes, not caring anymore who saw the tears. "I woke up sobbing, packed a bag, left my house, our house, and never went back. I couldn't do it, couldn't dishonor their memory with murder. But I couldn't stay either. Couldn't walk past Emma's room every day, couldn't sleep in the bed I'd shared with Sarah, couldn't pretend to be normal when everything inside me was broken beyond repair." "So you ended up on the streets," Tank said, understanding dawning on his face. "First, I tried to drink myself to death. When that didn't work, I tried picking fights with people I knew could kill me. When that didn't work either, I just stopped. Stopped trying, stopped caring, stopped being Marcus Reeves. I became nobody, a ghost for real this time, haunting the streets, invisible to everyone." Marcus pulled his jacket back on, suddenly cold despite the warm spring afternoon. "The funny thing is, my SEAL training kept me alive out here even when I didn't want to be. I know how to find shelter, food, stay warm, stay hidden. I know how to survive. I just don't know how to live anymore." Tank was quiet for a long moment, then he asked, "The $20. You were really trying to give it back?" Marcus nodded. "I may be homeless, but I'm not a thief. Never have been, never will be. Besides," he pulled out a small roll of bills from his pocket, "I've got money. Disability checks, pension, death benefits. There's probably close to $500,000 sitting in accounts I haven't touched. Money doesn't mean anything when you've lost everything that matters." "Jesus Christ," one of the other bikers muttered. "You could be living in a mansion, and you're out here in the cold?" "A mansion won't bring them back," Marcus said simply. "Nothing will." "So what's the point?" Tank suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm, but gently this time, examining the tattoo more closely. Below the SEAL trident and the CMH designation, there were other markings. Coordinates. "These numbers," Tank said. "What are they?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "The exact location where Sarah and Emma died. Latitude and longitude, down to the second. I had it tattooed there so I'd never forget. As if I could." The parking lot had gone completely silent now. Even the highway traffic seemed muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Tank released Marcus's arm and took a step back, his face a mixture of shame and something else. "Recognition. Red Sand," Tank said suddenly. "Syria 2018. You're the ghost of Holmes." Marcus flinched at the name. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. "My brother was there," Tank continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Lance Corporal Danny Morrison, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. He was one of the 3 you carried out." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Marcus stared at the massive biker, searching his face for any resemblance to the kid. And he had been just a kid, maybe 20 years old, who'd been bleeding out in his arms 5 years ago. "Danny," Marcus whispered. Red hair, freckles, kept talking about his mom's apple pie even with half his chest blown open. "That's him," Tank confirmed, tears now flowing freely down his scarred face. "You carried him 2 miles through enemy territory while you were shot to hell yourself. 7 bullets, the citation said. 2 in your leg, 3 in your back, 1 in your shoulder, 1 that grazed your neck. You should have died. Everyone said you should have died. But you got him out. You got all 3 of them out." Tank turned to his crew. "This man is the reason my little brother came home alive. The reason he got to meet his daughter, got to start that auto shop he always dreamed about. This man is a goddamn hero, and His voice broke completely, and I spit in his face. The shame that washed over Tank's features was absolute. He fell to his knees right there in the parking lot, this mountain of a man brought low by the weight of his actions. "I'm sorry," Tank said, his voice barely audible. "I'm so fucking sorry." Marcus looked down at him, and for the first time in 3 years, felt something other than pain and numbness. It wasn't quite forgiveness, wasn't quite peace, but it was something. "Get up," Marcus said quietly. "Your brother wouldn't want you on your knees." Tank looked up, surprised. "You remember him that well?" "I remember all of them," Marcus replied. "Every man I saved, every man I lost. They're all up here." He tapped his temple. "Danny talked about you, you know. Said you were his hero, said everything he did was to make you proud." Tank rose slowly to his feet. "He never told me that." "Men don't always say what needs saying," Marcus said. "I never told Sarah how beautiful she looked that last morning. Never told Emma that her crayon drawing of our family was the best artwork I'd ever seen. We always think we have more time." One of the other bikers, an older man with gray in his beard, stepped forward. "I own a construction company. We're always looking for good men, especially veterans. The offer's there if you want it." Another chimed in. "I've got a spare room above my garage. It's not much, but it's warm and dry." "My wife's a counselor at the VA," a third added. "She specializes in loss, grief, PTSD." Marcus looked at these men, these bikers who'd surrounded him with threat just minutes ago, now surrounding him with something else entirely. Support, community, the very things he'd run from for 3 years. "I don't know if I can," Marcus admitted. "I don't know how to be a person anymore. How to wake up with purpose, how to care about tomorrow, how to not see their faces every time I close my eyes." Tank reached into his vest and pulled out something Marcus didn't expect. A photograph. It was Danny Morrison, older now, holding a little girl with the same red hair and freckles. "That's his daughter, Sarah," Tank said, and Marcus's breath caught at the name. "He named her after your wife. He found out about what happened to your family. He said it was the least he could do to honor the man who gave him the chance to be a father." Marcus's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the asphalt, the photo clutched in his trembling hands. This little girl, alive and smiling, carrying Sarah's name forward into the world. It was almost too much to bear. "There's more," Tank said, his voice gentle now. "Danny's been looking for you for 3 years. We all have. There's a whole network of us. Guys you saved, their families, their friends. We call ourselves the Ghost Brigade. Not officially or anything, just people who owe you everything and have been trying to find you to pay it back." "I don't want payment," Marcus said weakly. "Not payment," Tank corrected. "Family. Brothers. The kind that don't let you disappear into the darkness, no matter how much you think you deserve it." Tank pulled out his phone and started making calls. Within minutes, he was coordinating with people Marcus had never known were looking for him. Danny Morrison was on his way, driving 3 hours from his home. Others were mobilizing, creating a network of support Marcus hadn't asked for but desperately needed. As they waited, Tank sat beside Marcus on the curb. The other bikers had formed a protective circle around them, keeping curious onlookers at bay. "You know what Danny told me about that day in Syria?" Tank asked. "He said you kept talking to them the whole time you carried them. Even when they passed out, you kept talking. You told them about Sarah and Emma, about the life you were going to have after the war. He said your love for them was what kept him fighting to stay alive. He knew if a man could love that deeply, that purely, then life had to be worth fighting for." Marcus broke down completely then. 3 years of bottled grief pouring out in public, in broad daylight, surrounded by strangers who were somehow not strangers at all. He cried for Sarah, for Emma, for the life they'd never have. He cried for the man he'd been and could never be again. He cried for all the wasted days and nights, for the honor he'd thought he'd lost, for the pain that never seemed to lessen. And through it all, Tank sat with him. This biker who'd spit on him an hour ago now had his arm around Marcus's shoulders, holding him steady as he shook apart. "It wasn't your fault," Tank said firmly. "Sarah and Emma's death wasn't your fault. You couldn't have known. You couldn't have stopped it. And punishing yourself living like this, it's not what they'd want." "How do you know what they'd want?" Marcus asked through his tears. "Because Danny told me what you said that day in Syria. You said Sarah's biggest fear wasn't that you'd die in combat. It was that you'd come home so broken that you'd forget how to live. You said Emma made you promise that if anything happened to Mommy, you'd still smile every day because—" What was it she said? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "Because smiles are contagious, and the world needs more diseases that make people happy." "Yeah," Tank nodded. "That. Your 6-year-old daughter understood something you've forgotten. The world needs you to smile again, Marcus. Not for you, maybe not even for them, but for all the people whose lives you could still touch." A truck pulled into the parking lot, tires screeching. The door flew open and Danny Morrison jumped out, older, healthier, alive. He took one look at Marcus and broke into a run. The impact of Danny's embrace nearly knocked Marcus over. Here was proof, living proof, that his life had mattered, that his service had meant something. Danny was sobbing, thanking him over and over, while his little daughter Sarah watched from the truck with curious eyes. "I'm sorry," Danny kept saying. "I'm sorry I couldn't find you sooner. I'm sorry about your family. I'm sorry you've been alone." "You're here now," Marcus managed to say. "You're all here now." And they were. Over the next hour, more vehicles arrived. Veterans Marcus had served with, men he'd saved, families of those who'd come home because of him. The parking lot of that rundown diner became a reunion, a gathering of the Ghost Brigade that had been searching for their lost hero. But the real shock came when a black SUV pulled up and a woman in her 50s stepped out. Marcus recognized her immediately. Jennifer Pemberton, Jonathan Pemberton III's mother. The crowd grew tense, protective of Marcus, but Jennifer raised her hands peacefully. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I need to speak with Sergeant Reeves." Marcus stood slowly, Tank and Danny flanking him protectively. "I know who you are," Jennifer continued, tears streaming down her face. "I know who you are, and I know what my son did to your family. I've been looking for you for 2 years. Your son got away with murder," Marcus said, his voice cold. "No," Jennifer shook her head. "He didn't. Jonathan took his own life 18 months ago. He left a note. He couldn't live with what he'd done. The guilt destroyed him, as it should have." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "He left this for you. I've been trying to find you to deliver it. And this." She pulled out a check. Marcus could see the amount. $5 million. "Blood money," Marcus said, stepping back. "No," Jennifer said firmly. "Justice. The justice the courts didn't give you. My family's fortune was built on the suffering of others. We've been war profiteers for generations. This is just a small portion of what we owe the world. Please take it. Use it to help other veterans, to honor your wife and daughter's memory. Create something beautiful from our ugliness." Marcus looked at the check, then at the envelope. His hands shook as he opened it. The letter inside was short. Sergeant Reeves, I know nothing I say can undo what I've done. I killed the best parts of you when I killed them. I was a coward who couldn't face my sentence, so I ran. But running doesn't work when the prison is in your mind. I see their faces every night. I hear your screams from the funeral footage. I know I'm going to hell and I deserve it, but before I go, I need you to know that they spoke to me. Sarah and Emma. They came to me in a dream and told me to tell you something. Live for us. That's all. Live for us. I don't deserve their forgiveness, but maybe you can deserve their wish. Jonathan Pemberton III. Marcus fell to his knees, the letter clutched to his chest. Sarah and Emma, speaking through the man who'd killed them, still trying to save him from beyond the grave. Jennifer Pemberton knelt beside him. "There's more," she said softly. "I've established a foundation in Sarah and Emma's names. It provides support for military families, especially children who've lost parents in service. I'd like you to run it, if you're willing. Give their deaths meaning. Give other families the time yours didn't get." The crowd had grown silent, watching this moment of impossible grace. A mother whose son had done the unforgivable, reaching out to the man he'd destroyed. Marcus looked around at all these faces. Tank, Danny, the other veterans, Jennifer Pemberton, little Sarah Morrison with her red hair shining in the afternoon sun. Then he looked at his tattoo, the coordinates that marked the spot where his world had ended. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to be an ending. "The warehouse district," Marcus said suddenly, looking at Tank. "There's an abandoned building there. Hundreds of homeless veterans sleep in the cold every night. Men and women who served, who sacrificed, now forgotten and thrown away." He stood up, something awakening in his eyes that had been dead for 3 years. $5 million could renovate that building, create housing, a medical clinic, job training facilities. We could call it, he paused, his voice catching, Emma's Haven, because she always said everyone deserved to have angels watching over them. Tank grinned. "The Ghost Brigade could help run it. We've got construction workers, doctors, counselors, all veterans or family members. I know contractors who owe me favors," Jennifer Pemberton added. "And politicians who'll fast-track the permits if they know what's good for them." Danny's daughter, little Sarah, had walked over during the conversation. She tugged on Marcus's dirty jacket. "Are you the man who saved my daddy?" she asked in a small voice. Marcus knelt down to her level. "Your daddy saved himself, sweetheart. I just helped him get home." She smiled, a smile so reminiscent of his Emma that it took his breath away, and handed him something. It was a crayon drawing of a soldier carrying another soldier, with angels flying overhead. "I drew this for you," she said. "Daddy said you might need some angels." Marcus looked at the drawing, at this little girl named after his wife, at all these people who'd come looking for him, who refused to let him disappear. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something he'd thought was gone forever: purpose. "Tank," Marcus said, standing up. "That offer for a room above the garage, is it still good?" "Always," Tank replied immediately. "And the job?" "Starts whenever you're ready." Marcus nodded, then did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He smiled. Not a big smile, just a small upturn of his lips. But it was real. "Then I guess Ghost Reeves is coming back from the dead," he said. "Sarah and Emma wouldn't want it any other way." 6 months later, the grand opening of Emma's Haven was covered by every major news network. The 5-story building could house 200 veterans, with medical facilities, job training, and a daycare center called Sarah's Angels. Marcus stood at the podium, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that Tank had helped him pick out. "This place," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice strong and clear, "isn't about charity. It's about honor. It's about remembering that the men and women who served our country deserve more than a cardboard box under a bridge. It's about proving that no one fights alone, and no one should have to heal alone either." He paused, looking out at the crowd. Danny Morrison was there with his family, Tank and the Ghost Brigade, all wearing vests with halos sewn above their badges. Jennifer Pemberton, who'd become an unlikely ally and friend. The families of dozens of veterans who'd been living on the streets just months ago, now with roofs over their heads and hope in their hearts. My wife Sarah used to say that home isn't a place, it's the people who refuse to give up on you. My daughter Emma believed that everyone deserved to have angels watching over them. They're not here to see this, but their spirit lives on in every bed, every meal, every second chance this place provides. Marcus touched the tattoo on his arm, the coordinates now accompanied by new ink, a pair of angel wings with the words, "Live for us," written beneath them. "I spent 3 years thinking I died the day they did," Marcus continued. "But I was wrong. I was just waiting for the right people to find me, to remind me that even in the darkest places, even when you think you're beyond saving, grace can find you. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes the person who spits in your face becomes the brother who helps you stand. Sometimes the mother of the man who destroyed your world becomes the partner who helps you rebuild it. He looked directly at Tank and Jennifer, both wiping away tears. To every veteran out there living in the shadows, thinking they're forgotten, thinking they're worthless, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You never were. There's an army of people looking for you, ready to stand with you, ready to remind you that your service mattered, that your life matters. Marcus held up the crayon drawing little Sarah Morrison had given him 6 months ago, now framed and hanging in his office at the Haven. A 6-year-old girl drew this for me when I was at my lowest. It shows a soldier carrying another soldier, with angels overhead. She told me I might need some angels. She was right. We all do. And sometimes, those angels look like bikers who spit in your face before they save your life. Sometimes they look like the mother of your enemy extending a hand in friendship. Sometimes they look like the daughter of a man you saved, carrying forward the name of someone you lost. The crowd was silent, many openly weeping. Sarah Anna Reeves died on December 15, 2021, Marcus said, his voice never wavering. But their love, their light, their legacy, that lives on. In this building, in the lives we'll save here, in the families that will be reunited, in the soldiers who'll find their way home, even when home seems impossibly far away. He raised his hand in a salute, and every veteran in the crowd returned it. This is Emma's Haven, Marcus concluded, where angels watch over warriors, where no one fights alone, and where even ghosts can learn to live again. The applause was thunderous. Marcus stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded by the Ghost Brigade, his new family, his reason to keep going. Tank threw an arm around his shoulders. "You did it, brother," Tank said. "You came back from the dead." Marcus looked at the building, at the veterans already moving in, at the sign above the door with Emma's name in lights. Then he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years, Sarah's presence, Emma's laughter, not as ghosts haunting him, but as angels lifting him up. "No," Marcus corrected, putting his arm around Tank in return. "We did it. All of us together. That's how you beat the darkness. Not alone, never alone, but together." As the sun set over the city, casting golden light through the windows of Emma's Haven, Marcus Reeves stood surrounded by his new family, his purpose restored, his heart, though forever marked by loss, finally beginning to heal. The ghost had become a guardian angel himself, and somewhere, somehow, he knew Sarah and Emma were smiling. The knock on Marcus's office door was tentative, uncertain. He looked up from the veterans' applications he was reviewing to see a young man in a tattered army jacket, eyes hollow with that 1,000-yard stare Marcus knew all too well. They said you could help," the young man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have anywhere else to go. My family thinks I'm dead. Maybe I am." Marcus stood up, walked around his desk, and did what Tank had done for him that day in the parking lot. He sat down on the floor, bringing himself to the young soldier's level. "What's your name, son?" "Thompson. Specialist Jake Thompson. 82nd Airborne." "Well, Jake Thompson," Marcus said, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus Reeves. And you're not dead, you're just lost. There's a difference. Dead is final. Lost means you can still be found." Jake looked at Marcus's tattoo, visible where his sleeve had rolled up. The seal trident, the CMH, the coordinates, the angel wings. Are those real?" "As real as the pain you're carrying," Marcus replied. "As real as the nights you can't sleep, the guilt that's eating you alive, the feeling that you don't deserve to be here when others didn't come home." Jake's composure cracked. "How did you know?" "Because I've been where you are. Hell, I've been worse. I let a biker spit in my face because I thought I deserved it. I lived in alleys and ate from dumpsters not because I had to, but because I thought that's all I was worth. But I was wrong, and so are you." Marcus stood and offered Jake his hand. "Come on. Let me show you your room. Then we'll get you a hot meal, a shower, and tomorrow we start the work. What work? The work of living again. Of honoring those we lost by refusing to be lost ourselves. It's hard work, the hardest you'll ever do. But you won't do it alone. As Marcus led Jake through Emma's haven, showing him the facilities, introducing him to other veterans, he caught a glimpse of himself in a window's reflection. He was 45 now, gray creeping into his hair, lines etched deep around his eyes. But he was standing tall, with purpose, with meaning. On his desk sat 3 photos, Sarah and Emma at the beach, the Ghost Brigade at the haven's opening, and a new one. Marcus with 37 veterans he'd personally helped off the streets, all standing in front of the building, all smiling. Above the photos hung a sign Emma had made in kindergarten, one Sarah had saved and Jennifer Pemberton had found in the house Marcus had abandoned. It read in crooked, colorful letters, "My daddy is a hero." And for the first time since he'd lost them, Marcus Reeves believed it might be true. If this story touched your heart, if it changed how you see that homeless veteran on the corner or made you think twice about judging someone by their appearance, then please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when someone surprised you by being more than they seemed, or when you were given a second chance you didn't think you deserved. And remember, there are Marcus Reeves everywhere, heroes who've lost their way, warriors fighting invisible battles, people who just need someone to see past the dirt and pain to the human being underneath. Hit that like button not for me, but for them. For every veteran sleeping rough tonight, for every person who thinks they're beyond saving, let's spread this story until it reaches someone who needs to know they're not alone. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful true stories that will change how you see the world. Next week, I'll be sharing another incredible tale that will leave you speechless. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring, and remember, sometimes angels come disguised as the people we least expect. Until next time.